All of human psychology explained in 20 minutes. Hello there, you're a human being, and within your skull resides an incredibly complex organ, your brain. And here's a rather unsettling truth. That very brain is actively misleading you at this very moment. It's not just a little white lie, it's fabricating details about things you just witnessed a mere 5 minutes ago. It's constructing convenient narratives about the reasoning behind a significant decision you made yesterday. It's even shaping your fundamental understanding of who you perceive yourself to be as an individual. And the most astonishing aspect of all this? You wholeheartedly accept and believe every single word it tells you. This is where psychology comes in. Psychology is the fascinating scientific exploration of the mind and behavior, striving to understand the inner workings of our thoughts, emotions, and actions. It's essentially the comprehensive instruction manual for navigating the human experience, a guide that was surprisingly never provided to you at birth. Today, we're embarking on a rapid journey, a speed run through the entire breadth of this incredible field. We're going to uncover everything currently understood about the intricate reasons behind why you think, why you feel, and why you act in the unique ways that define you. Get ready, because this is going to be an eye-opening ride, the brain basics. To truly grasp how you operate, let's begin by understanding the fundamental hardware that makes it all possible. Your brain is an astonishing biological supercomputer, housing approximately 86 billion neurons. These are the fundamental building blocks, specialized cells designed to transmit intricate electrical signals to one another, forming vast, complex networks. Every single thought you have, every emotion you experience, and every movement you make involves these neurons firing rapidly. As you are currently reading these very words, millions upon millions of these tiny cellular components are actively illuminating, flickering with activity, almost like a spectacularly bright Christmas tree undergoing a sudden intense burst of energy. Neurons don't actually touch. They communicate across minuscule spaces known as synapses. Within these synaptic gaps, they exchange chemical messages, which are critically important substances called neurotransmitters. You've undoubtedly encountered the names of some of these vital chemicals before. For instance, dopamine is widely, though often incorrectly, associated solely with pleasure. In reality, its primary role is far more nuanced, revolving around wanting, anticipation, and driving motivation. Serotonin plays a crucial role in regulating a wide array of functions, including your mood, sleep cycles, and even appetite. Cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone. It's incredibly useful during genuine emergencies, preparing you for immediate action, but it becomes quite destructive when its levels remain chronically elevated, impacting long-term health. Adrenaline, or epinephrine, is the powerful chemical surge that kicks in when you're preparing to confront a threat or escape from danger, like facing an unexpected challenge or, less commonly, running away from a bear. Conversely, GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, acts as the brain's primary calming neurotransmitter, slowing things down and reducing excitability. Glutamate, on the other hand, is the main excitatory neurotransmitter, speeding up neural communication. Collectively, these delicate chemical balances essentially dictate the rhythm and quality of your life. An imbalance, too much of one, not nearly enough of another, can lead to profound shifts in your mental state, manifesting as intense anxiety, deep depression, periods of manic energy, or even the unsettling conviction that everyone is scrutinizing you strangely. This intricate brain chemistry is a significant component of mental health, explaining precisely why medication can often provide vital assistance by helping to rebalance these crucial chemicals. Beyond its chemical messengers, your brain is also organized into specialized regions, each with distinct functions. The prefrontal cortex, situated directly behind your forehead, is your brain's executive control center, responsible for higher-level functions like planning, complex decision-making, and crucial impulse control. It's noteworthy that this is the very last part of the brain to fully develop, which goes a long way in explaining some of the more impulsive or stupid decisions made by teenagers. It doesn't truly come fully online until approximately age 25, meaning youthful brains are still very much under construction. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep within the brain, is deeply involved in processing fear and forming emotional memories, acting as an emotional alarm system. The hippocampus is vital for the formation of new long-term memories, which is precisely why damage to this area can result in profound amnesia, preventing new learning. Finally, the brainstem, located at the base of your brain, manages all the absolutely essential basic survival functions, such as breathing, heart rate, consciousness itself, and sleep-wake cycles. You aren't consciously controlling these vital systems. Instead, they operate autonomously, effectively running you and keeping you alive without your direct intervention. Now we arrive at a truly uncomfortable yet foundational piece of knowledge. Your brain primarily operates in two main modes, the conscious and the unconscious. The conscious mind is the small fraction you typically identify as you. It's the internal voice reading these words right now. It likes to believe it's in complete command, but that perception is largely an illusion. In reality, about 95% of everything you do, think, and feel is automatic, driven by your unconscious mind. Your unconscious mind efficiently handles complex processes like breathing, digestion, walking, and even the majority of your daily decisions, making them without your conscious input. The conscious mind, in this context, functions more like a brilliant press secretary, expertly crafting logical and compelling reasons for choices that your unconscious mind has already made. You might believe you consciously chose that specific job, that particular romantic partner, or even that exact sandwich for lunch, but studies consistently show that brain activity predicting a decision occurs several seconds before you are even consciously aware of making the choice. The very sensation of choosing, therefore, might be nothing more than a powerful, convincing illusion. This profound concept, the illusion of conscious control, will emerge as a recurring theme throughout our exploration of psychology. How you develop. Let's talk about the incredible journey of how you ultimately became the unique individual you are today. For centuries, there's been an enduring debate known as nature versus nurture. This fundamental question asks, are you predominantly the product of your inherited genes, or are you shaped primarily by your environment and experiences? The nuanced and conclusive answer is unequivocally, yes, it's both. Always both, in a continuous, dynamic interplay. Think of it this way: your genes load the gun by providing a predisposition or potential, but your environment and life experiences pull the trigger, determining whether that potential is expressed or how it manifests. For instance, you might be genetically predisposed to anxiety, meaning you carry certain genetic markers that make you more vulnerable. However, whether that anxiety actually develops into a clinical condition and to what severity largely depends on a multitude of environmental factors, including your childhood experiences, any significant trauma you might have endured, your chronic stress levels, and crucially, whether your parents or primary caregivers were emotionally available and responsive, or merely physically present but distant. Speaking of parents and early life, let's delve into the concept of attachment. In the crucial first few years of life, every human forms an attachment style with their primary caregiver, typically a parent. This early blueprint isn't just a fleeting phase, it profoundly influences and shapes every single relationship you will ever have throughout your life, from friendships to romantic partnerships. Secure attachment means your caregiver was consistently responsive and reliable. When you cried, they almost always came. When you needed comfort, they were there to provide it warmly and effectively. As a result, you grew up with a fundamental sense of safety in the world, developing a deep trust that people will generally be there for you when you need them. Individuals with secure attachment can handle intimacy and vulnerability in relationships without becoming overwhelmed or anxious. Congratulations if this describes you. You truly won the childhood lottery. Anxious attachment often develops when your caregiver was inconsistent. Sometimes they were present and attentive, other times they were distant or unavailable. You could never quite predict which version of them you would encounter, leading to a constant state of uncertainty. As an adult, this often translates into a strong craving for closeness and intimacy, but simultaneously, an intense and persistent fear of abandonment. You might be the one sending multiple "Are you okay?" texts when someone takes a little too long to reply. And you tend to overanalyze every tiny gesture or silence, often interpreting it as a sign of rejection. Avoidant attachment typically forms when your caregiver was emotionally unavailable. They might have been physically present, but emotionally checked out or unresponsive to your needs for comfort. You learned early on to self-soothe and be fiercely independent because you realized no one else was consistently going to be there for you. Now, as an adult, you often feel deeply uncomfortable with intimacy, preferring to keep people at a safe arm's length. You might even pride yourself on not needing anyone, viewing emotional reliance as a weakness. You're often the one who leaves a relationship before things have a chance to get too serious or vulnerable. There's also disorganized attachment, which is typically the most complex and challenging to address, often arising from situations involving abuse or severe neglect. In these traumatic scenarios, the very person who is supposed to protect you is also the unpredictable source of danger and fear. This creates an agonizing internal conflict where you simultaneously desire closeness and deeply fear it. This pattern is often the hardest to untangle without professional help. However, here's what truly matters and offers immense hope. These attachment styles are powerful patterns, but they are not an unalterable destiny. The concept of neuroplasticity is a groundbreaking discovery, confirming that your brain possesses an extraordinary ability to change and adapt at any age, not just in childhood. New experiences, intentional learning, and dedicated effort can literally create new neural pathways, reshaping how your brain functions. This is precisely why various forms of therapy, particularly attachment-based therapies, are effective. They quite literally work to rewire your brain's habitual responses and create healthier patterns. The emotional and behavioral patterns you learned as a child might be deeply ingrained and incredibly strong, but they are absolutely not permanent. You are not inherently doomed to endlessly repeat the same patterns of your childhood forever. Perhaps, with effort and insight, you can forge a new path. Perception and senses. Here's a concept that might genuinely mess with your understanding of reality. You don't actually experience reality directly. Instead, what you perceive is a complex, personalized simulation of reality, meticulously constructed by your brain. Think about it. Light waves strike your eyes, sound vibrations reach your ears, chemical molecules interact with your tongue and nose, and various pressures stimulate your skin receptors. Your brain then takes all this raw, fragmented sensory data and, with astonishing speed, builds an internal, coherent model of the world around you. But, and this is crucial, it's not a perfect, unbiased recording. It is always an active interpretation. Your brain is constantly making educated guesses, skillfully filling in gaps, predicting what will happen next, and making assumptions heavily based on your vast archive of past experiences and learned patterns. For instance, you actually have a blind spot, each eye, a small area where the optic nerve connects to the retina, and there are no photoreceptors. Yet, you don't perceive gaping black holes in your vision because your brain ingeniously fills them in, fabricating visual information and seamlessly blending it with the actual data to create a continuous, uninterrupted visual field. Optical illusions provide compelling proof of this interpretive process. Your brain might see two lines that are objectively the same length, and guess one is longer based solely on misleading context cues. Or consider the infamous "the dress" phenomenon. Your brain saw a dress and guessed it was blue in shadow or golden in bright sunlight, or even a confounding combination of both simultaneously, sparking a global debate on the internet that some of us are still not entirely over. Your brain also filters incoming information with astonishing ruthlessness and efficiency. Right now, consciously acknowledge the feeling of your clothes on your skin, the subtle ambient sounds around you, or the slight pressure of sitting in your chair. You almost certainly weren't paying any conscious attention to any of those sensations until I explicitly mentioned them. Your brain had already decided they weren't relevant at this moment and effectively screened them out, pushing them to the background. This phenomenon is known as selective attention. There's a famous experiment called the invisible gorilla for a reason. Participants watch a video of people passing a basketball and are instructed to count the passes made by one of the teams. Halfway through the video, a person in a full gorilla suit walks directly through the scene, stops, beats their chest, and then walks off. Astonishingly, about half of the people watching the video completely failed to see the gorilla at all. They were so intensely focused on the counting task that their brain filtered out a literal gorilla, deeming it irrelevant to their primary goal. This vivid demonstration helps explain why eyewitness testimony, though often trusted, can be remarkably unreliable. Your brain doesn't simply record events like a passive video camera. Instead, it actively constructs memories based on what you paid attention to, your existing expectations, and whatever narrative makes the most sense to you at the time of recall. And it does this with complete and utter confidence, even when its reconstruction is entirely inaccurate. Tragically, people have been wrongly convicted and sent to prison based on confident eyewitness testimony that was later definitively proven false by DNA evidence, highlighting the profound implications of our brain's interpretive nature. Memory. Speaking of memory, let's delve into how it actually functions, or rather, often malfunctions. Spoiler alert, it's far less perfect than you might assume. You possess several distinct memory systems, each with different capacities and durations. Sensory memory holds information for mere milliseconds, just long enough to register an afterimage when you close your eyes or the echo of a sound. Short-term memory, often compared to the RAM in a computer, can hold a limited amount of information, typically about 7 items, give or take 2, for only about 20 to 30 seconds before it fades or is replaced. Long-term memory, in contrast, is more like a vast hard drive, offering immense storage capacity for facts, personal experiences, skills, and knowledge that can last a lifetime. Information gets encoded from short-term to long-term memory through processes like repetition, intense emotional experiences, or by actively connecting new information to things you already know and understand. This is precisely why effective studying works better when you relate new concepts to existing knowledge frameworks, creating a richer web of associations. It's also why traumatic memories, often charged with extreme emotional intensity, tend to be incredibly sticky and persistent. But here's the truly crucial and somewhat unsettling aspect. Every single time you remember something, you are not simply playing back a perfectly preserved recording of the past. Instead, you are actively reconstructing that memory from scratch, piecing it together using fragments stored across various brain regions, and with each reconstruction, the memory is subtly but potentially significantly altered. The very act of remembering changes the memory itself. Memories are, in essence, like a continuous game of telephone you play with yourself over the course of years, with details potentially shifting each time you recall them. You forget things for 2 primary reasons. Firstly, decay means the memory trace simply fades over time if it's not accessed and reinforced. Secondly, interference occurs when new information overwrites old information, or conversely, when old information blocks new stuff from properly sticking. This explains why cramming for a test, while sometimes effective for short-term recall, is generally ineffective for long-term retention of knowledge. Perhaps most terrifyingly, false memories are astonishingly easy to create and implant. Researchers have successfully convinced people that they got lost in a mall as a child, that they met Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, which is impossible since Bugs Bunny is a Warner Brothers character, not Disney, and even that they committed crimes they never actually committed. All it takes is a combination of suggestion, repetition, and the power of imagination. Your brain, with all its sophistication, cannot reliably distinguish between a genuine memory and a vividly imagined or suggested false one. The subjective feeling of certainty you have about a memory means absolutely nothing about its accuracy. Traumatic memories, however, often function somewhat differently. The surge of stress hormones released during a traumatic event can actually enhance memory consolidation for certain aspects of the event. This is why you often vividly remember where you were or what you were doing during major, emotionally charged public events, but struggle to recall what you had for lunch last Tuesday. Yet, trauma memories can also become fragmented, leading to distressing flashbacks or dissociated experiences rather than coherent, ordered narratives. Want to genuinely remember things more effectively? Space your practice and review over time instead of trying to cram everything at once. Actively test yourself by trying to recall information rather than just passively rereading notes. And critically, prioritize sleep, because your brain dedicates significant time during various sleep stages to consolidating and organizing memories from the day. Pulling an all-nighter before a test is, in essence, sabotaging your own memory consolidation process. Learning and conditioning. Every single behavior you exhibit, from the simplest habit to the most complex skill, was learned through some mechanism. Psychology has identified a few main powerful ways this happens. Classical conditioning is perhaps best illustrated by Pavlov's famous dogs. Ivan Pavlov, a Russian physiologist, was originally studying canine digestion when he serendipitously noticed that his dogs began salivating not just when food was presented, but even before it arrived, simply upon hearing the footsteps of the lab assistant who brought the food. Intrigued, he began to systematically ring a bell just before feeding the dogs. Eventually, after repeated pairings, the dogs started to salivate merely upon hearing the bell, even if no food was present. They had associated the neutral sound of the bell with the impending arrival of food. This type of conditioning happens to you constantly throughout your daily life. The distinct sound of your phone notification often triggers a small burst of dopamine anticipation because you've powerfully associated that sound with incoming messages or social validation. The smell of a particular perfume can instantly transport you back to memories of an ex-partner. A specific song can evoke a vivid, long-forgotten memory or feeling. This mechanism is also a common way phobias develop. One intensely negative experience with, for example, a dog, and suddenly all dogs, even friendly ones, can trigger an overwhelming fear response. Operant conditioning focuses on consequences. The core principle is straightforward. Behaviors that are followed by a reward tend to increase in frequency, while behaviors that are followed by punishment tend to decrease. B.F. Skinner, a pioneering behaviorist, famously demonstrated this with rats in Skinner boxes equipped with levers. If a rat pressed the lever and received food, it would quickly learn to press the lever frequently. However, the timing and consistency of rewards are crucial. Immediate rewards are significantly more effective than delayed ones, which is precisely why it's so incredibly difficult for many people to stick to a diet or consistently save money. The immediate pleasure of eating that tempting dessert now often powerfully outweighs the distant, abstract benefit of being healthier or financially secure later. Furthermore, variable rewards, where you don't know exactly when you'll receive a reward, are by far the most addictive. This is the psychological principle behind slot machines. Maybe this pull of the lever will pay out. It's also the engine driving social media feeds. Maybe this next scroll will reveal something interesting or validating, or maybe the one after that. The sheer unpredictability keeps you compulsively hooked and scrolling for more. Habits form when behaviors become automatic. You perform an action, you receive some form of reward, even if it's just a feeling of satisfaction. And eventually, your brain creates a neural shortcut, effectively paving a pathway. The basal ganglia, a part of your brain, takes over, allowing you to perform the action without conscious thought. This is why you can often drive home on autopilot, barely remembering the journey. It's also precisely why deeply ingrained bad habits are so incredibly difficult to break. The neural pathway is already well established and efficient. Willpower, in this context, is essentially the conscious mind attempting to override an automatic, deeply wired process, which is incredibly exhausting and often unsustainable. To effectively break a bad habit, you need to identify the environmental or internal cue that triggers it, then consciously replace the habitual routine with a different, healthier behavior, while still ensuring you receive some form of reward. For example, if you want to stop stress eating, first notice when you typically reach for snacks. The cue is stress or discomfort. Then, replace the eating with something else that provides comfort or distraction, like taking a short walk, listening to music, or journaling, and repeat this new pattern until the new neural pathway becomes stronger than the old one. Observational learning or social learning is simply copying others. Albert Bandura famously illustrated this with his Bobo doll experiment. Children observed adults either interacting aggressively with an inflatable clown doll, hitting, kicking it, or playing calmly. When later left alone with the Bobo doll, the children who had watched the aggressive adults mimicked their violent behavior, while those who saw calm behavior were less aggressive. This demonstrates how profoundly we learn a vast array of behaviors, aggression, kindness, skills, and even fears, by simply watching and imitating other people, especially those we look up to. This is a key reason why your parents' behavior and actions often shaped you far more deeply and effectively than their countless lectures or admonitions. Emotions. You feel things. Sometimes it feels like too much, an overwhelming tide of sensation. Other times it feels like not enough, a frustrating numbness. And then there are moments when your emotions seem to be entirely out of sync, focusing on the wrong things at precisely the wrong times. Let's explore the fundamental reasons why this happens. Most researchers generally agree on a core set of about 6 basic, universal emotions that appear to transcend cultural boundaries. Fear, anger, joy, sadness, disgust, and surprise. Babies, even before they acquire language, display these emotions, suggesting they are likely hardwired into our biology, the product of eons of evolution. Fear, for example, is a vital survival mechanism, keeping you safe from danger. Anger serves to protect your boundaries and signal injustice. Disgust helps prevent you from ingesting potentially poisonous or harmful substances. Joy reinforces behaviors and experiences that are beneficial for your well-being. An emotion is typically a quick, automatic, physiological response to a stimulus. You see a snake, and your body instantly triggers a fear response. Your heart rate accelerates, your muscles tense. This happens in milliseconds, often before your conscious mind even fully processes what you're seeing. A feeling, on the other hand, is your conscious interpretation and subjective experience of that underlying emotion. A mood is a longer-lasting emotional state that doesn't necessarily require a specific, immediate trigger. You might find yourself in an irritable mood for an entire day without precisely knowing its origin. The amygdala, that small almond-shaped structure deep in your brain, functions as your brain's primary alarm system. It's responsible for triggering the primal fight-or-flight response, often before your more rational prefrontal cortex even has a chance to fully register or understand what's happening. This rapid response system was incredibly advantageous for escaping predators in our ancestral past. However, it's far less adaptive when your ancient amygdala mistakenly decides that a demanding work email is equivalent to a saber-toothed tiger, flooding your system with cortisol and triggering a full-blown stress response. The amygdala, unfortunately, doesn't know it's the 21st century. It's still operating on ancient software, constantly looking for lurking tigers. Some individuals are inherently better at emotional regulation than others. This is partly a matter of temperament. You're born with a certain predisposition to be more or less emotionally reactive, and partly learned. If your caregivers in childhood helped you effectively process and understand your emotions, validating your feelings, you likely developed stronger emotional regulation skills. If, however, they frequently told you to stop crying or dismissed your feelings, you might struggle more with managing emotional intensity as an adult. Emotional intelligence, EQ, is the crucial ability to recognize, understand, and effectively manage your own emotions, as well as accurately perceive and influence the emotions of other people. Research consistently shows that emotional intelligence is a better predictor of success in many areas of life, particularly in leadership roles and personal relationships, than traditional IQ. You can be incredibly brilliant intellectually, possessing a high IQ, and yet still inadvertently ruin every significant relationship in your life because you lack the fundamental skills to understand and handle feelings, both yours and others. Motivation and needs. Why do you do anything at all? What drives your actions and choices? This is the core question of motivation. Abraham Maslow, a renowned psychologist, proposed that humans have a hierarchy of needs, often visualized as a pyramid. At the very bottom, forming the foundation, are physiological needs, essential requirements like food, water, shelter, and sleep. Once these basic needs are met, individuals progress to seeking safety needs, which include personal security, employment, resources, health. Next come love and belonging needs, encompassing friendship, family, and a sense of connection. Above that are esteem needs, which involve self-respect, confidence, achievement, and recognition from others. Finally, at the pinnacle, is self-actualization, the drive to become the very best version of yourself, to fulfill your unique potential. The fundamental idea of this framework is that you cannot effectively focus on satisfying higher-level needs until the more basic, lower-level needs have been adequately met. It's incredibly difficult to worry about self-actualization or pursuing your dreams when you are literally starving or without a safe place to sleep. While this framework is a simplified model, more a useful conceptual guide than a strictly proven scientific theory, it captures a profound truth about human drives. Motivation itself primarily comes in two distinct flavors. Extrinsic motivation involves doing things for external rewards, think money, good grades, praise, or social recognition. Intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is about engaging in activities because they are inherently satisfying, enjoyable, or meaningful to you, without any external pressure. Research consistently demonstrates that intrinsic motivation is far more powerful, sustainable, and leads to greater long-term well-being and engagement. Now let's revisit dopamine. Everyone tends to call dopamine the pleasure chemical. This common perception is in fact largely incorrect and a significant oversimplification. Dopamine is not primarily about liking, it's fundamentally about wanting and anticipation. It's the neurochemical that drives you to pursue things, to seek out rewards, and to feel motivated. Once you actually get the reward, a different set of neurochemical systems takes over to handle the experience of pleasure or enjoyment. This distinction is crucial for understanding why, for instance, scrolling social media often feels compulsive and addictive, but ultimately leaves you feeling empty and unsatisfied. Dopamine is constantly screaming, more, 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 driving the seeking behavior, while the actual liking system often remains unfulfilled. Each scroll triggers a fresh burst of anticipation, but the actual reward rarely matches that powerful expectation, leading to an endless chase for a payoff that never quite arrives. Willpower is indeed real, but it is demonstrably limited. Our capacity for self-control depletes over the course of the day, much like a muscle that gets tired. This is precisely why you are more prone to making poor choices or giving in to temptations late at night, after a long day of exerting self-control. It's also why diets often fail after a particularly stressful or mentally draining day. Your willpower reserves have been exhausted. Here's an interesting paradox to consider. Too much external reward can actually kill intrinsic motivation. If you start paying someone for something they previously enjoyed doing simply for the joy of it, they might paradoxically find less enjoyment in it afterward. The extrinsic reward can crowd out and diminish the intrinsic motivation, turning a passion into a chore. Personality. Personality is essentially your consistent and enduring patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving across various situations and over time. It's what makes you recognizably you, a unique individual with a characteristic style of interacting with the world. The most scientifically supported and widely accepted model of personality today is the Big Five personality traits. Openness to experience. how imaginative, curious, and unconventional you are. Conscientiousness, how organized, disciplined, and responsible you are. Extroversion, how outgoing, sociable, and energetic you are. Agreeableness, how compassionate, cooperative, and trusting you are. Neuroticism, how prone you are to negative emotions like anxiety, worry, and moodiness. Everyone falls somewhere along a spectrum for each of these 5 traits. There isn't a single good or bad personality profile. Rather, there are different combinations that come with unique strengths and potential trade-offs. For example, individuals high in conscientiousness often predict high career success due to their discipline, but they might also struggle with rigidity or perfectionism. Someone high in agreeableness tends to be very likable and gets along well with others, but might also be more susceptible to being a pushover or struggling to assert their needs. So, where does personality originate? Broadly speaking, it's estimated to be about 50% genetics and 50% environment. Studies of identical twins raised apart, for instance, often reveal strikingly similar personalities, underscoring the genetic component. However, your life experiences, your unique environment, and the way you process events also profoundly shape you. Factors like birth order, cultural upbringing, major life events, both positive and negative, and even random chance occurrences all play a role. The good news is that personality can and often does change over time, especially during your 20s, when your brain is still undergoing significant development and maturation. People generally tend to become more conscientious, more agreeable, and less neurotic as they age, a process known as personality maturation. So, it's highly probable that you won't be exactly who you are now in 10 or 20 years. This realization can be either terrifying or incredibly liberating, depending on how you currently feel about your present self. It's important to note that when personality traits become extremely pronounced, inflexible, and cause significant problems in various areas of life, we refer to them as personality disorders. Conditions like narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, or antisocial personality disorder are not merely about being a lot or having a strong personality. They represent severe, ingrained patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that seriously damage an individual's life and relationships, causing immense distress for themselves and those around them. Finally, a crucial note on personality tests. The Big Five model has extensive scientific support. It's considered reliable, consistent results, and valid measures what it claims to measure. In contrast, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI, while popular, lacks consistent scientific validation. Many psychologists view MBTI as essentially astrology for intelligent people who might think they're too sophisticated for traditional astrology, offering appealing but ultimately unproven categories. Social psychology. You are not an isolated individual making perfectly rational choices in a vacuum, entirely separate from others. Far from it. You are, at your core, a profoundly social animal, constantly and often unconsciously influenced by the presence, actions, and expectations of other people. Solomon Asch conducted a famously insightful conformity experiment in the 1950s. Participants were seated in a room with several other individuals who were secretly Confederates, actors working with the researcher. They were shown a series of lines and asked to state which comparison line matched the target line. It was an easy task with a clearly obvious answer. However, when all the Confederates intentionally gave the wrong answer, an astonishing approximately 75% of the genuine participants conformed to the incorrect group answer at least once. They denied what their own eyes plainly told them, simply to fit in with the group. Why did they do this? Some participants genuinely began to doubt their own perception, thinking, if everyone else sees something different, maybe I'm actually wrong. Others knew they were right but chose to conform because they didn't want to stand out, appear foolish, or risk social disapproval. This illustrates just how incredibly powerful social pressure can be. Stanley Milgram's obedience experiment, conducted shortly after, was even darker and more unsettling. Participants were instructed to administer what they believed were increasingly painful electric shocks to a learner, who was actually a Confederate, for incorrect answers. Approximately 65% of participants went all the way to the maximum 450 volts, even while visibly distressed, sweating, trembling, and protesting. When the experimenter, a figure of authority, calmly insisted they continue, most people obeyed. This chilling experiment powerfully demonstrated just how potent and dangerous authority can be. Milgram himself was inspired by attempts to understand how ordinary German citizens could have participated in or allowed the atrocities of the Holocaust. The bystander effect is another crucial social psychological phenomenon, stating that the more people present during an emergency, the less likely any single individual is to offer help. Everyone assumes someone else will intervene, leading to a diffusion of responsibility. If you ever find yourself in a crowd needing help, don't just shout generically. Point at one specific person and say, "You in the red shirt, please call 911. This breaks the diffusion of responsibility and assigns a clear role. Related to this is groupthink, a phenomenon where a group of well-intentioned people makes irrational or dysfunctional decisions because the desire for harmony and conformity overrides realistic appraisal of alternatives. Everyone nods along, dissent is suppressed, and they often make terrible decisions together. Classic examples include the disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion or the Challenger space shuttle disaster, both of which exhibited clear patterns of groupthink. We automatically divide the world into in-groups, people we identify with, and out-groups, everyone else. People within your in-group are often seen as unique individuals with complex inner lives and valid reasons for their actions. People outside your in-group, however, are far more likely to be perceived through simplified stereotypes, often without conscious awareness. This fundamental categorization is the foundation of prejudice and discrimination. Your brain categorizes people instantly based on superficial appearances, and those categories come preloaded with associations and assumptions that you often didn't consciously choose or agree with. First impressions happen in milliseconds and are remarkably difficult to change later. The halo effect illustrates this. If we like one thing about someone, for example, they are attractive, seem competent, or are similar to us, we tend to automatically assume other good things about them. Attractive people, for instance, are often unconsciously assumed to be smarter, kinder, and more trustworthy. Studies have even shown they often receive lighter prison sentences for similar crimes, highlighting the unconscious biases at play. Cognitive biases. Your brain is not a perfectly rational, logic-driven machine. It's fundamentally a shortcut machine, designed for efficiency rather than absolute accuracy. And these mental shortcuts, while often helpful, come with systematic errors known as cognitive biases. Confirmation bias is perhaps the biggest and most pervasive one. You instinctively seek out, interpret, and remember information that confirms what you already believe, while actively dismissing or downplaying information that challenges your existing views. You don't evaluate evidence objectively like a neutral scientist. You process it more like a lawyer fiercely defending your current position. You are not objective. I am not objective, and neither is anyone else, making it crucial to be aware of this tendency. The availability heuristic means you judge the likelihood or frequency of an event by how easily examples of it come to mind. Shark attacks seem common because they're dramatic and heavily reported, making them readily available in your memory. In reality, you are statistically more likely to be killed by a cow than a shark, but cow attacks rarely make the national news. Anchoring describes how the first piece of information you encounter, the anchor, heavily influences all subsequent judgments and decisions. If a salesperson first tells you a car costs $50,000 and then reveals it's on sale for $35,000, you feel like you're getting an amazing deal, even if $35,000 might still be overpriced. Salespeople and marketers expertly leverage this bias. The Dunning-Kruger effect, humorously yet accurately, describes how people with low ability in a particular area tend to significantly overestimate their own competence, while people with high ability often underestimate themselves. In essence, beginners are often overconfident in their limited knowledge, while true experts tend to be more humble and aware of the vastness of what they don't know. The sunk cost fallacy is the tendency to continue investing time, money, or effort into something because you've already invested in it, even when quitting would objectively be the smarter course of action. You might stay in a bad relationship for years because you've already given it so much time and effort, even though that investment is gone regardless of whether you stay or leave. Your brain struggles to let go of perceived past losses. Loss aversion is a powerful bias where the pain of losing something feels roughly twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining an equivalent amount. Losing $20 feels significantly worse than finding $20 feels good, which explains why we are often so risk-averse. There are over 180 documented cognitive biases, and this is just a small sample. The scariest part about all of them? Simply knowing about these biases doesn't make you immune to their influence. Awareness is the first step, but actively working against them requires conscious effort and critical thinking. Mental health. Let's turn our attention to what happens when things go wrong, when the intricate machinery of the mind experiences persistent challenges. Approximately half of all people will experience a diagnosable mental health condition at some point in their lives. This is not a rare occurrence or an anomaly. It is, unfortunately, a significant part of the human condition for many. Anxiety disorders are essentially fear responses that, for various reasons, simply won't shut off, becoming chronic and disproportionate. Generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, involves persistent excessive worry about nearly everything, almost constantly. Panic disorder is characterized by sudden, intense attacks of fear that are so severe they often mimic the symptoms of a heart attack, causing immense physical and psychological distress. Social anxiety disorder is an intense fear of being judged, scrutinized, or humiliated in social situations, often leading to avoidance. Specific phobias are irrational and intense fears of particular objects or situations, such as heights, spiders, or flying. Overall, about 30% of people will experience an anxiety disorder at some point in their lifetime, making them incredibly common. Depression is much more than just fleeting sadness. It's often characterized by anhedonia, the profound inability to feel pleasure or joy in activities that one used to enjoy. It involves persistent feelings of worthlessness, hopelessness, overwhelming fatigue, and a profound lack of energy. It is crucial to understand that depression is not laziness, weakness, or a choice. It is a complex brain state involving significant changes in neurotransmitter levels, neural pathways, and even measurable alterations in brain structure and function. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, occurs when the psychological and physiological responses to trauma become stuck. The brain keeps reliving the traumatic event through intrusive thoughts, vivid flashbacks, and nightmares, often triggered by seemingly innocuous cues in the environment. It is not about an individual being weak. It is a normal, albeit dysregulated brain's response to abnormal and overwhelming events. Other common mental health conditions include obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, which involves intrusive, unwanted thoughts, obsessions, that create intense anxiety, leading to repetitive behaviors or mental acts, compulsions, performed to neutralize that anxiety. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, is fundamentally an attention dysregulation disorder, where the brain struggles to consistently control where focus goes, leading to challenges with sustained attention, impulse control, and hyperactivity. Bipolar disorder involves significant mood cycles that swing between episodes of deep depression and periods of elevated mood, increased energy, and sometimes impulsivity known as mania or hypomania. Schizophrenia is a severe and chronic mental disorder that involves psychosis, characterized by breaks from shared reality, often manifesting as hallucinations, seeing or hearing things that aren't there, and delusions, fixed, false beliefs. Here's the most important takeaway. Mental health exists on a broad spectrum. Everyone experiences anxiety sometimes, and everyone feels occasionally depressed. Disorders are diagnosed when these experiences become persistent, severe, and significantly impair an individual's daily functioning, relationships, or overall quality of life. Good news is that treatment works. Therapy, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is highly effective at helping individuals identify and change unhelpful thinking patterns and problematic behaviors, and its positive effects often continue long after treatment ends. Medication can effectively adjust brain chemistry, helping to rebalance neurotransmitters, and can be truly life-saving for many individuals by alleviating severe symptoms. Often, a combination of therapy and medication proves to be the most effective approach. The profound stigma surrounding mental health has tragically killed more people than the disorders themselves, by preventing countless individuals from seeking the help they desperately need and deserve. Getting treatment for a mental health condition is not a sign of weakness. It is a brave and vital act of self-care, a form of essential maintenance for the most complex and critical organ in your entire body. So, what profound insights have we gained from this journey through human psychology? We've learned that you are not nearly as rational or objective as you might comfortably believe. Your incredibly complex brain constantly lies, cheats, and takes numerous shortcuts, shaping your reality. You don't perceive reality directly. Instead, you interact with a constructed model of reality that your brain generates, a model that is often subjective and prone to error. Your memories, far from being perfect recordings, are unreliable reconstructions that subtly shift with each recall. Many of your seemingly conscious decisions are profoundly influenced, if not outright determined, by unconscious forces operating beneath your awareness. You are remarkably vulnerable to the potent influence of social pressure, the systematic errors of cognitive biases, and the overwhelming force of emotional hijacking. Your very personality was shaped by a complex interplay of genetic predispositions and experiences you didn't choose. And your early attachment patterns continue to echo through every single relationship you form. Your daily habits often run on autopilot, while your conscious mind busily invents elaborate stories to maintain the comforting illusion of being in complete control. But here's the crucial pivot. Knowing all of this is immense power. Understanding the fundamental principles of psychology means truly understanding yourself in a deeper, more compassionate way. It means recognizing when your own brain might be subtly tricking you or playing old tapes. It means having the awareness to catch cognitive biases before they significantly ruin your judgment or lead you astray. It means developing profound compassion for yourself and for others, because we are all, in essence, running on similar buggy software, navigating the world with the same inherent cognitive limitations and emotional vulnerabilities. The human brain is, without hyperbole, the most complex object known in the entire universe. It contains those 86 billion neurons, forming an astonishing 100 trillion connections, creating an intricate web of activity. It is the miraculous organ that creates consciousness itself, whatever that truly is. It creates you, and it is diligently running you right now, mostly without your explicit permission or conscious direction. This, then, is psychology, the comprehensive, albeit complex, instruction manual for being human. Nobody gave it to you at birth, but now you have begun to unlock its secrets. Okay, this took significantly longer to research and compile than I anticipated, and I definitely need a well-deserved nap. If you found this insightful or learned something new, please consider hitting the like button to show your support. And if you're interested in a deeper dive into any of these specific topics, perhaps a part 2, do let me know in the comments, because I have about 400 more pages of notes that, unfortunately, didn't make the cut for this particular overview.